Hi class, my name is Katrina Schreiber, and the topic that I chose was the civil rights movement, specifically Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an American Baptist minister and obviously a civil rights activist from around 1955 until he was assassinated in 1968 by white supremacists in Memphis, Tennessee. He led the movement for racial equality and to end segregation through peaceful protests. His speeches intensified the civil rights movement and challenged America to see its wrongdoings and do something about it. He really made people uncomfortable, not just everyday people, but people that were in power and in privilege to actually do something about the inequalities at the time, and that are still unfortunately a problem today that we really haven't resolved. But anyway, some key moments in his life as a civil rights activist were, like I said, the nonviolent protests such as sit-ins and marches. One in which he was arrested and wrote the letters from Birmingham jail. One quote that really spoke to me, that really captures the why behind the movement and the wrongdoing being done, says, "Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages the personality. It gives the segregator a false sense of superiority and the segregated a false sense of inferiority, and ends up regulating persons to the status of things. So segregation is not only politically, economically, and sociologically unsound, but is morally wrong and sinful." To me, that one quote that he said in that letter summarizes the why behind what he was doing, and the why behind what America was doing to African Americans was so wrong and painful. You can't just put labels on people as a reason and a why to make you better or make them less than you. There's some characteristics of the postmodernism that were in this module with the diversity and the multiculturalism being shown, is that all people matter and that all of their views matter, and that just the people that think that they're in power and have given themselves privilege, they're not the only people that matter and the only people that deserve fair treatment and laws that protect them and a fair showcase in society. He also breaks down the barriers put on African Americans by the labels of society, and doesn't let them stay in a box, and that's allowing them to choose what their identity is, not their identity being chosen for them. Allowing them to have a performance and having their life's work speak for them, not just the color of their skin. His most famous one that everyone's taught in school in terms of protests and speeches is the March on Washington, where 250,000 nonviolent protesters marched on Washington, D.C., and he gave his I Have a Dream speech, which called for justice, equal rights, and friendship, and an end to racism in the United States. The one that I wanted to spend the most time focusing on is Bloody Sunday, the march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama for voting rights, because I feel like that was the tip of the iceberg, or the last straw, if you will, that they actually saw change happen from some of their work, and a culmination of their work, fruits of their labor, if you will. The first attempt on March 7th was a failed attempt. They were on a bridge and they were attacked by tear gas from state troopers, and there was blood everywhere. I know that John Lewis had a big cut to his head, and there was literally blood in the streets. The second attempt on the 21st and the 25th, they made it all the way to Montgomery, Alabama. And two quotes that Martin Luther King gave in his speech there. The first one is just shows their unwillingness to back down, that you can beat them in the streets, you can do all of these horrible things that we've done to them in the history, but they're still going to fight for the freedom and the rights of equality. And he says, we are not about to turn around. We are on the move now. We are on the move, and no wave of racism can stop us. No lynchings, no segregation, no throwing condiments at people and coffee at sit-ins, no arresting people for not giving up their bus seat will stop them from wanting the same rights that I and my family take for granted. The last quote that I wanted to share is, our aim must never be to defeat or humiliate the white man, but to win his friendship and understanding. We must come to see that the end we seek is a society at peace with itself, a society that can live with its conscience. That will be a day not of the white man, not of the black man. That will be the day of man as man. I know you're asking today, how long will it take? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth pressed to earth will rise again. How long? Not long, because the arm of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. In some ways, he was right. It wasn't very long. In just a few short months, the Voting Rights Act was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, and no state was allowed to pass any laws that were discriminatory against people having the right to vote. But we don't always hold our laws to stay laws for long. And in 2013, we took back some of those rights, unfortunately. One of the things that he says that really resonates with me is, in all of the pain and the suffering of this movement, not just the time period of the 50s and the 60s, but from slavery up until this point, there's so much forgiveness and friendship that they're willing to give the people that are doing the wrongdoing to them. Because at the end, basically all he ever wanted was peace and equality. And it's really unfortunate to me that he was met with an assassination and people killing him for peace, and that people just couldn't understand that and were scared to give up their privilege and power that they thought was their right. I think the saddest part is that we see some of this today, and we say that racism is gone, but it's not. It's in different forms. It's in how we put African Americans and people of color in jail at a higher percentage than white people. We make it harder for them to rent and own homes. And still with voting, we saw in the last election in Georgia how many hoops and activists had to push people of color into voting because their access to voting and their right to vote was just so much harder to get to through some of the laws that we've passed in recent years. I hope this is helpful for